Hi folks, this is all the fruit. I'm in Heidelberg, Germany. It's the 10th of May 2020, and since this was quite a mild winter and a very warm spring, we already have the first ripe mulberries on the 10th of May. This is actually, this is one of the early trees here in Heidelberg, but not one of the earliest. So I guess if I had checked on some of the earlier mulberry trees, I might have found ripe fruit a couple days earlier. Well, even here I might have found a couple ripe fruit, maybe even a week earlier, because some of them are already overripe and shriveling up. This is amazing because the Romans used to call the mulberry tree Morus sapiens, the wise mulberry tree, since it would start development of its flowers and leaves and young shoots only after the danger of late frost has passed. And actually, during the next couple days, it's gonna get horribly cold. As you can see now, everybody's running around in hot pants and tops. It's pretty hot, but around the 10th of May, we have usually a very cold spell in Germany lasting just a couple days. It might be a week earlier or later, but it's gonna get cold again. And a lot of Germany might be hit by frost. Maybe not Heidelberg, but still it's quite risky. Yeah, so the mulberry tree usually develops quite late to avoid late frost, but as you can see, the first days of May, they are the first ripe fruit. Well, as you can see here, most of the fruit are still completely underripe, so I guess the peak for this tree will be towards the end of May. That's still very early for a mulberry tree. It's not the earliest, it's not the year with the earliest ripening period for fruit. We had a year where we had ripe fruit even a week or 10 days earlier than today, than this year. But it's still quite rare, quite unusual. Well, this is climate change for you. So now, when we look at those fruit, let's pick a couple. Oh, some are so ripe, they're already falling to the ground when I just touch them. With some I have to use a teeny tiny bit of force. Well, look at those quite ripe fruit. They are purplish black. Well, does this mean this is the black mulberry, Morus nigra? Nope. This is the white mulberry, Morus alba. However, I suspect that all those white mulberries with black fruit are actually hybrids with the black mulberry. I didn't find any literature on this. If you can find out what those purple and black mulberries, which are officially Morus alba, like the white mulberry, what they are, I would be very grateful to you, because I really do suspect that they are hybrids. Even their leaves are usually a bit more rough than the real white mulberry. Well, as you can see, like most mulberries in Germany, the fruit are purple but belong to the white mulberry. Actually, real white mulberries or real black mulberries are quite rare in Germany. Most mulberries belong to the species Morus alba, the white mulberry officially, but the fruit are purple or black. Let's try them. Quite sweet. Not much sourness. That's more typical for Morus alba than Morus nigra. The sweetness almost dominates, but they're pretty mild. A tiny bit of sweetness, but even less of sourness. And the fruit are already quite dry, not very juicy. Look at that. Let me try to focus on my hand. Come on, focus on my hand, which is squeezing this mulberry. Well, I'm managing to squeeze out a couple drops, but it's not very juicy. We are in the third year of drought here, 2018. The spring started out quite wet with a lot of storms, but summer and autumn were very dry. 2019 was a mix, but because the trees were already very stressed and the moisture in the soil was depleted, 2019 was a period of wet and was a mix of wet and dry periods, but still a lot of drought stress because no reserves and the trees were already stressed. And now the spring of 2020, there was almost no rain, like a couple days of rain and then a month of drought. That's usually not a big problem in the early spring if there is still a lot of reserves of water in the ground. The trees can still develop, but the reserves, the water reserves, the groundwater reserves are depleted. So yeah, that's the reason a lot of fruit tastes a little bit dry. Look, it's the first days of May and you can see that the tree has already been watered several times. So basically the last couple years what the city gardeners have been doing, they have to neglect some of their works because most of the time they are just driving around with big trucks and watering the most valuable trees because they don't want to lose them. Well, here it's not so easy to see them from here, but basically, let me see where it is, which area. Basically around the area where you can see those two TV towers poking out of the mountains behind the buildings, we have a sequoia forest, and in very dry years the fire brigades are even watering those sequoia forests. Of course, you cannot do this efficiently, you can imagine. I think they calculated that basically one water truck is enough for like one tree and one day, and watering a whole forest for months is nothing the local fire brigade can manage to do perfectly, but they are trying. So they are trying to save even the sequoia forest, and they're also trying to save here those street and park and roadside trees. So the hot and dry weather, yeah, it gives us fruit very early, but despite the trees being watered, the fruit are already quite dry. And later in the year we might get a lot of problems with fruit not developing properly, or even with whole forests dying like it happened 2 years ago. So we are expecting a lot of forests and fruit orchards and single fruit trees and other quite old and valuable trees to die this year. And if it continues like this, a lot more than we expected will die. So folks, those were the earliest mulberries in Germany, with some comments on the current drought. Stay tuned for a lot more fruit videos from the beautiful country of Germany, and don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe.